All right. Um, we wanted to welcome everyone this morning, afternoon, depending on where you are. My name is Dara Anderson, and I'm going to be your moderator for today's session. And for the ADEAL conference, I am a board member with ADEAL. If possible, we wanted to encourage everyone to turn your cameras on so that our presenter, Dr. Audrey Heron, could see you guys and we can see you. Please make sure that your mic is muted to minimize background noise. And if you'd like to offer nonverbal feedback, for example, the thumbs up, the clapping hands, the heart, you can use those Zoom reactions. And there will be time at the end of our session for questions and answers. Please note that by entering this ADEAL session, you acknowledge that you are aware the session will be recorded and may be posted online with ADEAL content. This session will utilize the Zoom live transcription function, which produces subtitles at the bottom of your screen. Please note that the accuracy of the transcription is contingent upon a variety of factors, including background noise and the clarity and volume of our speaker's voice. So again, thank you for joining us for keeping the fire burning, leveraging experience to enhance effectiveness. So sorry. And again, please welcome Dr. Audrey Heron from Angelo State University. She is going to be our presenter for today.
Thank you so much, Dara. I have had such a good time so far and I've heard it pronounced two different ways. Is it ADEAL or Adele? What is the official pronunciation?
ADEAL is how I pronounce it, but that's a little Texan in there. So I think either way is good.
That's the way that I was saying it as well. And so I didn't want to mess that up, but I've had such a good time with all the other sessions. And I know that there are a couple of concurrent sessions going on during this time. So I know that those of you who are attending, if you need to check out and go check out a different session, you're not going to hurt my feelings. I want you to get the most out of this conference as possible. But I will say that I'm very excited to have at least a little bit of a small group. I'm hoping that we can share some information with each other so that you come away with some actual practical strategies to implement into your practice. And you hear a little bit about just my informal experiential experience and my data and some things that I have experimented with and tried out during my time as an online instructor. And hopefully we can have some conversations about what has worked for you, and I can share with you what has worked for me. So just to double check, can everyone see my screen? Because my little yellow thing went away. Okay. Great. I just wanted to double check before we got started. Yeah, so really the motivation for having this type of session was that I think that whether you are teaching in K through 12 or you're in a face-to-face setting or in a distance setting, a lot of times as educators, we can feel like we get stuck in a rut in doing the same things over and over again because they're very comfortable. And a lot of times, if you're a teacher like me, you get your routine and you say, this is how I handle my class. This is how I prep, my online class to get it online. This is how I open my sessions. This is what I send out before classes actually start. This is what my week looks like. But it can often feel like you're living in Groundhog Day, like every day is the same and every week is the same, every term is the same, and nothing is really changing. And I found that I was constantly telling my students that I wanted them to be these lifelong learners, but I wasn't implementing as many of those new practices that I was learning about as I probably should have been to really practice what I was preaching. And I was going to all these different really good professional developments and conferences like this, and I was coming away with all this really good information that I was really excited about right after the conference, but then I had a little chance to really turn that around and implement that. And I wasn't doing my due diligence and really working hard enough to embed a lot of those things that I was learning about. So I was filing a lot of these things away in these folders about these things that I would try one day. And so what I wanted to do was really just, find a path to really put some of those things into practice in a real way and do it in a way that didn't make it feel overwhelming. Because I know that especially with the COVID pandemic, what we learned is that everybody was kind of struggling. And so the good thing about that was that a lot of new tools came out, a lot of good information and research came out, but then it kind of felt overwhelming. Well, what should I start embedding in my classes? What should I start doing, and how do I get started doing that? And so that's where the motivation for creating this type of session came about. Just a little bit about me. Again, as Dara said, my name is Audrey Heron, and I'm an assistant professor at Angelo State University, and I work in the Department of Curriculum and Instruction. I primarily work with school counselor certification and in the school counseling programs. But in my past, I have worked as a teacher, a school counselor, and an administrator in K through 12 schools. And I've actually served ASU in a variety of roles throughout the years. But my research interests really revolve around online teaching and learning, and just doing what I can to improve my practice to ensure that I am being the best teacher that I can be for my students. And if you know anything about Angelo State University, you know that we have a gum tree. So I know the picture's a little blurry there, but that's one of my favorite pictures. Recently, I was on campus and my husband and I actually met at ASU. So we took a few different pictures, and this is me in front of our famous gum tree. And if you attended, Dr. Lyons is here with us today. She presented an awesome session right before this. And she talked a lot about video content, which is a lot about what I have a lot to say about video content as well, and just my experience with that. But what I wanted to do, rather than have just kind of a set agenda, I was kind of sharing with Dara and with Jamie before the session that I created this wonderful presentation. And then after sitting through some of the sessions, I thought, okay, I'm gonna punt. I'm going to back up a little bit because I have a lot of information I'd like to share, but I also want to make sure that it's really relevant to who is attending my session. So I have a little agenda, and I can go through my presentation and hit on my different points. But what I'd like to do also is kind of open it up and say, well, what do you want to hear about most? Because I want to talk about the things that I have tried, and I have tried lots of different things. And so I'm going to kind of go through what started this process, go through what my initial plans were, and then I'll kind of tell you the things that I tried in my practice. And then out of those things, I kind of like you to tell me, well, which one should we talk about? Which one should we spend most of our time on? Because I don't want to spend my whole 45 minutes going through just a little bit, and you maybe not hear as much about the one thing that you came to hear about today. So is that okay with everybody? Okay, awesome. Okay, so when I use this theme about the fire, about keeping your fire burning, what I'm really talking about is what motivates you and what is your passion for your profession. So a lot of times we talk about teachers or basically anybody who's worked a job for a long time kind of losing their spark. And so we're going to talk a little bit about what that fire is and what it means to me, why I feel like it is important for you to keep that fire. And if you don't feel that you have a fire, how maybe you can start to build your own fire. So when I talk about the fire, what I think about is remembering your why. And I worked with an adjunct instructor, a wonderful woman named Alexis, who always had me remembering, what is your why? And so those times where the teaching got difficult or I was struggling with balancing all of my responsibilities, she always reminded me to remember your why. Why did you become an educator to begin with? Why do you love teaching online? What makes the distance environment that alluring to you that you have dedicated your life to working in this career? What special experiences have you had with students, either their light bulbs going off or you helping them overcome barriers or assisting them and supporting them? Remembering that all those good things that keep you in this profession, and that can help you really stay motivated to continue to improve, even though you've maybe been in this profession for years and years, or maybe you've encountered some struggles. So if you're sitting here thinking like, well, I don't really know, I kind of fell into this position, I didn't really have a passion for education to begin with, maybe that's where you should start, is by really thinking about your why, really thinking about the good things about this profession and really keeping those in mind so that you can create a mission to be and become the type of instructor that you want to be. So what I started by doing is defining my goals. I really wanted to keep it simple so that I didn't feel overwhelmed. I wanted it to be just short statements that I could keep in mind. So when I was going through those groundhog days, I could remind myself, oh yeah, this is what I am, my goal for this term is, or my goal for the semester is. I really thought about keeping it realistic. I know that I've gone through a lot of professional developments that say, hey, use this video app and you can have these words appearing here and there, and you can have sound effects and you can have cutaways and all these things. But is that realistic for me to do on a weekly basis? Or is that realistic for me to do on a semester by semester basis? So I really wanted to keep it realistic to things that I like to do, because as we all know, if you like to do something, you're more willing to do it. If it's something that you are dreading to do, you're probably not going to commit to sticking with it. I also thought about what I'm good at doing and what I had the resources and knowledge to do. And I also wanted to think about how I wanted to use that experience, whether it was just going to be for me and my teaching practice, or if I wanted to, do some published research or some formal research. So again, I've done a lot of different presentations at different conferences and different events about formal research and published research, but I wanted to take a different approach to this session and just talk about what the experience was like for me. So you're not really reading about what this study found or what that study found. You're just kind of hearing about what my experience was like with that, so we could have some real discussions about maybe some things that you've tried out and what that experience was for you. But I also know that a lot of people like to have that formal research to rely on and to read through. So what I'm going to do at the end of our session is I'll drop a link to my presentation in the chat for everyone. And when you open this up, you'll actually, all of these are clickable. So they all go out to links to different research about group work, because we're going to talk about group work. There's some information on video content. And of course, there's lots of research out there on incentivizing engagement in student classes. So I didn't want to leave that part out completely. But again, I just kind of wanted to focus on my anecdotal experience and things that I have tried out. So again, if y'all will remind me, I will drop the link in my chat. So what I learned throughout my process is that you really have to know yourself in order to move forward with any of these strategies. So I said, here are a few things that I've learned over the last several years whenever I've done this initiative to try out new things in my classes. So a few of the things are that I do in fact love my job. That is one thing you actually have to acknowledge about yourself, is do you really like your job or do you not? And I found out that I really do love my job. I really love efficiency. Anybody that's ever worked with me knows that I like to work smarter, not harder. And so online learning is so wonderful for that, because you have an opportunity to front load. I can build in so many things before the class even opens. And that really frees me up to really do the hands-on work with my students during the term, because I've already built in so many things into my courses. I really like transparency and being able to be real. I have noticed that in doing videos, I like it when I can just do one and done, that I'm not clicking that stop button and re-recording over and over and trying to make it perfect. If I mess up, that's okay, because I have learned that my students actually find that a lot more approachable than whenever I'm dressed in a blazer and my background is perfect and I don't have a lawnmower starting in the background or something else that's come up. I do like video tools that are easy, user-friendly, and offer easy transcription, so that can be accessible to my students. I have learned that I have a lot to learn about accessibility, and that's an area that I'll probably never master, but I am constantly trying to learn more about. I like having multiple options for things. I've learned I talk way too much. In Dr. Lyon's session earlier, she was talking about the research that says keep those videos short. And that is something I'm still working on. Another of our colleagues, Dr. Annika Cisneros, does a lot of great research about videos in courses. And she's always saying, keep your videos short. And that is easier said than done for someone like me that talks so much. For me, I've also learned that when I offer flexible options, when I have optional group work, that results in a higher group satisfaction than when I assign and make people do the group work. So I've learned that. And I've also learned that grace for myself and grace for my students goes a long way, much further than I ever thought it would. So just the kind of data that I informally collected and that types of data that you can collect. I looked at different view counts, whether I was using Flipgrid or I was using Kaltura. I looked at the view counts for my videos. I did some statistics tracking through Blackboard. I looked at the number of discussion board posts. And then I also had a lot of qualitative and quantitative feedback, mostly qualitative, in the terms of an end of course survey that I would send out and ask my students. And I would also just email them and say, hey, how was the course for you? And that gave me my informal qualitative data that I use for my student feedback. And I also just got a lot of unsolicited student feedback to tell me about what they liked about the course or what they felt might be better. So here's what I did. My goals, after I reflected on my why and I thought about what I was good at and what was a realistic goal for me. My goals were to become more efficient, to actually utilize the stuff I was learning at conferences and professional development, to build stronger relationships with my students so that I could increase student engagement and hopefully student success. I wanted to improve the quality of remediation of the learning because I had some learners that were really missing the mark and I didn't feel like I was doing my job as their teacher to really stop the learning there and back up and make sure they got the concepts before we move forward. And then I also just wanted to have more fun with my daily work and not feel like I was stuck in that revolving door of fall A, fall B, spring A, spring B. So I thought about what I had seen that might work. So I had learned a lot about video content. I had had some experience with groups and having collaborative assignments in classes. And I had had some experience with students requesting bonuses and extra credit. So I knew that was something that they were interested in. So what I did was I made a plan. My plan was I was going to commit to it doing at least one video a week and offering at least one synchronous optional video meeting. And I teach in asynchronous 8-week courses. So having the synchronous meeting, I wanted to make sure that it was optional because it was still an asynchronous class. I also wanted to create a welcome package. There's also a lot of information about a liquid syllabus. I steal a lot from the wonderful Dr. Michelle Pacansky-Brock, and I have some links down here in my presentation. She's got some really, really great information. I also wanted to incentivize engagement with the much requested extra credit. I know that we also probably get down to the final week of courses and you have those students who email you and ask you if there's any bonuses or extra credit. And I wanted to commit to being flexible and offering options to allow student autonomy. And I wanted to provide more grace with my deadlines. So some of the things that I did was I did start doing the welcome package, the videos. I did some bonus words for some extra credit, and I offered optional group work. So here's the part where I'm going to say I have 3 attendees and then our moderators here. Which of those would you like to hear about most? And I'll try to look at the chat here. Okay, I see David nodding his head and Kristen saying the liquid syllabus. And I'll put a disclaimer is that my welcome package is a little bit different than the actual liquid syllabus, but I do have a link there to that that I can send out because I don't want to steal that idea. Again, that comes from Michelle Pacansky-Brock, so I don't want to steal her idea, but I did modify the welcome package. And so I'm happy to show that if that's what y'all would like to see. So let's talk about this welcome package, and I'm going to try to move my screen over and see if y'all can see that now. Are y'all now seeing Dr. Heron's welcome package? Okay, so this is a welcome package that I created, and I think I'm coming up on about 2 years. 2 years using this. And what it is it's a Google site. that I created, and it's kind of grown and revised over the time that I've used it. But what I do is I send it out once classes open. And for our classes, if opening day is on a Monday, we usually make the classes available a few days before so that students can get in the class, make sure they're in the right class, look at the syllabus, start getting their materials organized. So as soon as my classes are made available, I send this welcome package out. So this welcome package has a video embedded, and it's about me. So it's just about a 3.5 minute video that just talks about me, a little bit about my background. It talks about my family, talks about my educational background, and just lets students know a little bit of personal information about me. And what I really learned about this part in particular is that students enjoyed knowing things about me that weren't on my CV. So they didn't really care so much about all the conferences I had presented on or what my dissertation was, but they really found it interesting that Halloween is my favorite holiday. They really found it interesting that I really like going to concerts, and that I have seen Bob Dylan and Eric Clapton. They liked hearing about those different things. And as a matter of fact, this morning I just got an email from one of my students. We just started the fall B term on Monday, and she said, I think we have so many things in common. We both have two little boys similar in age. Halloween is both of our favorite holidays, and we both like to go camping. And this is our first few days of the class, and she already feels a little bit somewhat connected to me. And after that, she actually asked a question about the class. And so I found that very interesting. So whether or not her watching my video and knowing a little bit about me helped her feel more comfortable to open up the week with a question she had about the course, I can only hope. I can only hope that that's the reason that I made her feel a little bit more comfortable. But I have a little spiel here that says, welcome. It says my name. It has the video. I also have a link directly to Blackboard. So it kind of gives them a direct access, makes it convenient for them to get directly into the course. Then I have some functional information and just tells them, about the term, that it's an 8-week course, that we do have a calendar, and that it's an asynchronous class, but I may offer some synchronous meetings, just some little functional information about the term. And then I move on to what I call our mutual commitment. And again, a lot of these things are modeled after the welcome package from Michelle Pacansky-Brock, but I outline my commitment to them, that I want to maintain a focus on our learning and objectives, that I want to be actively present in their learning, I want to provide a supportive and safe environment to them, and that I'm not going to be perfect, that I'm going to make mistakes. And that was actually what happened this morning. Is after that student said, hey, my favorite holiday is Halloween too. Did you notice that you put the post-assessment in the pre-assessment spot? And I said, okay, that will not be the last time that I make a mistake in this class. And so I own up to my mistakes because I want them to own up to their learning as well. Then I outline kind of what I want their commitment to be. I want them to be an active participant in the class and to meet due dates, but also that I realize that they're not going to be perfect and they're going to make mistakes and they may encounter bumps. And so I want to make sure that we have this mutual commitment going in before we ever hit the first day of the course. And again, like I said, I always like to give credit to my sources. So I actually link out to her website here. And again, I'll drop that in the chat for you guys. I outline my basic philosophy for teaching, and I also put my tips for success for the course. And so I kind of modify these as I go through time and learn more about what my students are needing and what they're doing. But I kind of outline what are the top, there's 8 here, but I may expand that to 10 or maybe reduce it to 5 eventually. But these are the things that if you do these, that will help you. That will help you be successful. So I kind of outline those before we ever step foot officially in the course. I do have some information because again, as Dr. Lyons was saying in her session, we work in the counseling program. So we have different counselors. We have certified school counselors. We have mental health and wellness counselors. So I give them some information about their specific licensure, certification, those types of things. I talk about the grading scale. And we talk a lot about this in the first week of the course when I have my Zoom meetings, is that, we do have a grading scale, but there are no hidden expectations or agendas. I want to be very transparent in how I evaluate your learning throughout the course. And if you have questions, communicate with me so that we can talk about that, so that you're clear about how your mastery is going to be evaluated and how that is going to be translated into your individual assignment grades and your eventual final grade. Then, of course, I leave my contact information. They should have it if they're in Blackboard, but we all know that if you put it in multiple places and make it convenient for them, they might be more apt to reach out to you. So, of course, I put my email address there. And then I just put some resources. I let them know up front that their health, their mental health, and their physical health are both important to me. So I actually link out to our health services and counseling services available at our university. So I have links available there. I also have links to our counseling center and the online support and resources that we have, even for distant students, because you would be surprised at how many of my students say, well, I didn't know I had access to the writing center or to counseling services. So I make that content available to them. And then I have what I call our RAM fam resources. At ASU, we are the Rams and Rambells. And so we call ourselves the RAM fam. And so I give them just some important contacts like our advisors. I link out to our website, information for current students, calendars, bookstore, all that good stuff. And then I also give my information about our social media programs. And so this is all just a package that I basically send out before they ever step foot in the online course to help them get to know me and know my expectations for them and what expectations I have for myself throughout the course. So along those lines, before we move on to anything else, what questions do you guys have about this? And I'll actually go to her website. Okay, sorry.
No, I was just wondering, are you able to track statistically the number of hits that you're getting? Are students actually going to your Google site and looking?
What I have done is, instead of doing it through Google, which I'm sure that you can do, that felt a little overwhelming to me to do that. So what I have done, I've tried it a couple of different ways. I started out by embedding it in a course and trying to do some statistics tracking that way, like doing it through my welcome page in the actual Blackboard course. But what I was finding too is that it's kind of hard to track the number of unique hits. So maybe I was getting a lot of hits, but I didn't know if that was return users to the page, and I didn't know if I was getting enough. So what I have relied on more is my qualitative feedback from my students. So when I first launched it, I just asked, how did you like the welcome package? And the students that responded said that they loved it, that they really liked it, particularly if they were new. What I did learn is that students who had already been in the program for a while, they said, oh yeah, that's neat. But they felt like they had already kind of knew some of that information. So what I have deduced, again, just through my experience with talking with my students, is that it's more beneficial probably to students who are very new to the program or who have never had me as an instructor, rather than those that are kind of veteran students. I notice that they think it's cool, they think it's useful, but it doesn't have the same impact as it would for new students.
Thank you for that explanation. And I have to echo everybody's comments. It is amazing. You've done an outstanding job. I love it.
Oh, thank you so much. Well, again, I really hate to take credit for any of that, because if you look at mine, I tried to give her credit throughout mine. But if you look at my welcome package and you look at a lot of what Michelle Pacansky-Rock has done with humanizing online education and just the liquid syllabus and doing all those things, there's so much out there that I really just kind of felt like I was plagiarizing her good ideas. So I tried to give her credit throughout, but really it made sense to me and it really resonated with me. And so, like I said, I have a couple of links to her stuff throughout my presentation that I'll drop in the chat. But I just pulled up her site so that you can kind of see she's got a lot of good stuff about humanizing online learning. And if you follow her on Twitter, she pushes a lot of stuff out there. So I don't know her personally. I just admire her. And we use, rather than, we talk about like the liquid syllabus, we use Concourse for our syllabus. And what I noticed too is that a lot of my students, like they would look at the syllabus, whether we were doing it through Concourse or whether we were doing it through a PDF file or even something kind of interactive within the course, it feels like they still were not engaging as much as I would like. And so that's going to be one of my new initiatives for the new year, is kind of really looking at that idea of a liquid syllabus and trying to combine that a little bit with what I've done with my welcome package and kind of have a more tailored approach to each of my classes to kind of fit in some of those ideas there. So we've kind of talked about the welcome package. We have a couple more minutes left before we could have some times for questions. But again, along with that, I did some experimenting with weekly debrief videos and synchronous Zooms, some video remediation, incentivizing student engagement through the use of bonus words and extra credit, offering flexibility, and then flexible optional group work. So are any of those topics did y'all want to hear about? Again, I really want you to get as much out of this session since you chose mine, and there were 3 really good sessions and you chose mine to come to.
Would you talk about the incentivizing and how you use that?
Absolutely. And that was actually really fun. I'm going to get to that part of my presentation. Y'all have to bear with me as I scroll. But again, I just wanted to make sure that I gave you what you paid to see today. The bonus words was really a fun little project for me. What I was hearing, and I don't know if you like what levels you teach, but I teach graduate students. So they're all adults. Most of them have full-time jobs and have families, and they're balancing a lot. So with adults, and I know with me personally, if I ask somebody to do something, they were also often like, well, what's in it for me? Is it worth a grade? Am I going to get points for this? And so I knew that adult learners really liked to make it worth their time. They needed to feel like if I'm missing part of my son's basketball game or baseball game or practice because I have to do this schoolwork, I need to know that it's worth it for me. And so we talk a lot about the rationale behind the engagement and about the importance and value of all the different pieces of their learning. Even though we do all that, and I try to be very transparent in my teaching methods, I would still get those questions a week or 2 before the end of the term that said, hey, I don't know that I'm going to end up with the grade that I want. So are you offering any extra credit, or can I do these different things? So I knew that they liked extra credit, and I knew that they liked to be rewarded for engaging in the different communications that I was sending out. So what I decided to do is, since I embed weekly videos and I send out different resources and I engage in our class cafe, which is our student-led forum, I wanted to incentivize them to actually engage with those materials, because it's all well and good if I create this wonderful debrief video where we debrief and unpack the learning that we just did and we talk about the upcoming learning. But if nobody's watching those, is it really having the effect that I want it to have? And so what I did is I embedded 5 bonus words throughout this last term. So in fall A, our 8-week term, some of those were in videos in my weekly debriefs. I'd say, okay, by the way, here's our bonus word. The bonus word is growth for the week, and this is why. And I would connect it to something that happened that week. Sometimes it would be in an announcement where I would give a weekly announcement and I'd say, and by the way, if you're reading this, here's your bonus word for the week because you engaged in this communication. In some of them, we had extra resources that were posted in the class cafe, or students were really working together in the class cafe. So I posted bonus word there. So they were all posted in kind of different ways, but they were all accessible to every student in the class. They were all made very clear and were highlighted and bolded and those kinds of things. And I gave different reminders about them throughout the term. Then what I did is I created a quiz at the end of the term, and it was a max value of 2 points. So it wasn't a ton of extra credit, but it was enough that those people that were maybe sitting at an 87, 88 or a 77, 78, that they felt like maybe, you know, really investing their time in these supplemental materials would get them those bonus words. But on the side of that, an extra perk is that if they were engaging those materials, I was getting that extra face time. I was ensuring that they were listening to those debrief videos. They were looking at those supplementary materials that I was sending out. So what I found out through the bonus words is that, sorry, I have to scroll again, pardon me, was that I did it in 2 different classes. And of course, I felt like I did it the exact same in both classes. I felt like I presented it the same. They may have been different words or they were posted in different places, but I explained the rationale. I gave the same amount of reminders, gave the same amount of bonus words. In one of my classes, over 50% participated in that quiz at the end of the term. In the other class, over 80% participated. In that class 1, where only 50% participated, only a few of them got all 5 of those words correct. Only a few of them got the full credit. But in that second class, where over 80% participated, all but a few got all 5 words correct. So it was very strange to see the difference. Now, of course, there are 2 different courses. One of them was a human growth and development class, and the other one was a role of the school counselor class. But in that class 2, I saw that almost every single person that attempted the quiz got the credit. Here's the interesting thing about that, and I didn't break down the statistics, but in that class 2, where over 80% participated and almost all got full credit, a huge percentage of those were brand new first term students. So they were bought in from, I think, the beginning. I think in the other class, there was a lot bigger, the majority of them, this was not their first class. A lot of them, they were actually towards the middle or end of their class, program. And so I think that some of them, kind of like Dr. Lyons, if you were at her session, you know, said that it wouldn't have mattered either way. I think they're either going to watch the videos or look at those resources or not. And so it was interesting to see how I presented it, what I thought the same way in both classes, but I got 2 different results. Now, the interesting thing is, again, I've only done this 1 term and we just ended that term, but I got 2 separate emails from 2 different students to tell me that they loved the idea of the bonus words because they are always looking for ways to engage their online students, because a lot of them are either still teaching hybrid classes and doing a lot of Google Classroom and those types of things. And so they said, I'm always getting them, hey, did you read this in this module? Or did you look at the email I sent out? She said, and so both of them were telling me how they plan to utilize that idea in their own teaching. And probably for one of the first terms ever in recent memory, it really reduced those questions I was getting at the end of the term. Will you be rounding up my grade, or will you be bumping anything at the end, or can I have a redo or extra credit? I didn't get any of those questions this term. Now, of course, I want them to ask me questions. I want them to have open communications with me about their learning and about my evaluation of their learning. But I think that because they knew they were already offered this chance to engage, and if they just looked at these videos and engaged with these materials, they had a chance for points at the end. I think it reduced some of those questions that I was getting. And sorry, I have dual screen. So if you see me looking like this, it's because I'm actually looking at y'all. I'm looking at you guys, but I've got my dual screen set up so I can present and also watch the screen as well. And so I think we've got, by my count, we have about 7 minutes left. And so I'll go into another topic, but just real quick, I just wanted to say in doing these things over the last few years and making the welcome package and doing my weekly debrief videos, my Zoom meetings, my video remediation, all those different things, I have really seen an increase in positive unsolicited student emails. Now, do I ask my students, hey, give me your feedback? I do, but I also get students who just email me and tell me what they thought about the course or what they thought about some of these different things that I have been implementing. And I really have seen an increase in student engagement. My view counts on my Flipgrid, some of the videos I was sending out were kind of dwindling in the last couple of terms. And when I embedded these bonus words, they shot through the roof. It was like they were all over the place. And I was like, okay, maybe we're onto something here. I also saw an increase in my in the positive comments that I got in my end of course evaluations, not just the questions that I asked, but in our formal evaluations like IDEA. I think we all want our students to say really positive things about us, especially in those formal evaluations for our, faculty development, but we also want those things to be true. I really wanted them to tell me real things. And even if it was stuff that was hard for me to hear, if it was something I needed to improve, that was something that I wanted to work on. I also had an increase in self-reported student satisfaction, even when they encountered struggles. So I had a few students who were really struggling in the class and maybe didn't end up with the highest final letter grade, but they told me that they stayed in the class because of the extra support that they received, and they still felt satisfied in their learning, even though maybe they only made a C in the class. And so that to me was really important because we want to retain our students and we want to make sure that they feel satisfied in their learning, not just that they get an A, but they feel good about that A, or they feel good about that B or C. And it just really increased my own awareness of university resources, because I've started trying to do, that's my next thing, is trying to do warm handoffs. So instead of just saying, hey, did you know that our advisor, we have a certification advisor that could help you with that question, and giving that email, what I've started doing is emailing that student and copying that certification advisor and saying, hey, I'm doing a warm handoff here. This is the question the student came with. This is who I'm connecting you with. And this is why, because he handles this, this, and this. Y'all talk and let's make sure that you get your issue taken care of. And I've gotten a lot of, so far in the warm handoffs I've done, I've gotten a lot of good positive feedback on that as well. And so I think we have, if I'm managing my time, I think we have about 4 minutes left. So I'll open it up for questions. And I could fill 4 minutes very easily with talking about something else, but I also want to make time for questions.
Audrey, I was wondering if there are any other people that you follow, whether it be on social media or other places, that you have gotten really good ideas from that maybe you could share with this group?
Oh, absolutely. Well, like you said, I think I've probably given a lot of press to Michelle Pacansky-Brock, but she's one that I really like. It's really easy to follow her on Twitter. I help manage our social media for our programs at ASU. And so it's really easy for me to see that in my feed and be able to read about the things that she's sharing. So that's one thing. The other, and I'm sorry if I'm making y'all seasick, I'm going to scroll back up. But the other is not as, to me, it's not as publicized, but I have done a lot of work with transparency. So if you've ever heard of the Transparency in Learning and Teaching Project, or the TILT project, that's Dr. Marianne Winklemas. There is a lot of good information about just transparency in teaching and how to set up your assignments so that you can help those underrepresented populations in your class, and basically help every student in your class. And I started with the project with learning how to design my assessments more effectively and really outline a rationale, a purpose, and the steps they needed to take, and give them a clear criteria for their evaluation and how I was going to be evaluating their learning. So that's where I started. But as I started digging in more, there's a lot to transparency that comes in your actual teaching practice, and not so much what you've built into the class. And so, like I said, I do have a link to it here somewhere. but I'll have to dig it up, Dara. I'm sorry. I don't want to keep scrolling and making everybody ill. But I will definitely drop that in the chat. And since we are doing questions, I'm actually going to drop the presentation link. And so hopefully everybody will be able to access that from there. And like I said, all those little buttons are clickable, and they go out to different research and different links that I talked about in the presentation. But that last one was the Transparency in Learning and Teaching project